Welcome back to the Tech Startup Network podcast. Joining me today is David Berg, the CEO and founder of CommanderAI, a company at the forefront of leveraging artificial intelligence to transform the waste management industry. Under his leadership, CommanderAI has raised over $5 million in funding and grown to a team of more than 15 employees serving customers across the US and Canada. David, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Ashley.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you here. I have not had anyone working in waste management yet, so I think it's a really interesting industry to talk about, as I know you'll be able to share more about. So that's where I'd love to start, is to have you share with our listeners more about who you are and what you do.
Totally. So yes, waste management is a very nuanced and non-spoken about space. I think a lot of folks are often surprised to hear that there's even technology that exists within it. Just to preface it with a little bit about myself and the background within it, I was at Battle Motors, which is a truck manufacturer, for the start of my career. In doing so, I worked with waste companies all over the country. And about 2 to 3 years into that journey, it became really clear that software and technology weren't a part of the space. And so, one day I was in a meeting with the client and one of their sales reps came into the room with a sheet of paper. And when he left, I asked the, VP of sales what that paper was, and he said those were his leads for the week. And I asked him, I'm like, you guys are, a multi-billion dollar a year company. Do you not have any like CRMs or software in place? And he said, no, we've been running our business this way for 50 years plus. It's worked so far. And so we haven't had a need to change. To me, I was like, there's no way that eventually this industry will not adopt technology. We're seeing it across many other verticals. And so I felt to myself that if I wasn't going to go ahead and create technology, then somebody would eventually do it. And so that's what led to Commander AI. For our listeners who haven't heard of Commander yet, Commander is a sales intelligence platform that's built uniquely for the waste industry. And so, in really simple, non-tech terms, it helps them find new business, manage new business, and then keep those customers. And it's all nuance built for the industry and it's purpose built. So if you're outside of waste management, unfortunately, this tool isn't for you. But if you are a waste hauling company, then this is the only tool for you.
Oh, I love it. I feel like that's a really common problem across legacy industries is just everything's done on paper or in spreadsheets or through email. Like it's not a centralized place. And like you said, when you're meeting with that company and you're like, why is everything done on paper? It's like, one, it's not scalable for the company. Two, I always worry, like, what if you lose that paper? Do you lose like your whole business? Like,
Literally. Yeah, quite literally. And I think that it's such a great point because, of course, like you and I, that it would seem so foreign to operate that way. But a lot of
Mhm.
these companies generationally have been run by the same set of owners for 50 years. And so, again, in the 1970s, sure, that might have worked. But I think what's also playing a role here is a lot of the generations are passing over now. And so, the younger
Yes.
generation is taking over the business and that they're tech savvy and using AI and wanting to adopt technology. And so there's that wave of influx as well.
Absolutely. And I'm glad that you brought that up because that was going to be my next question. Is I feel like, of course, in legacy industries, there's so much opportunity for innovation. But to your point, when someone's owning a business for 50 plus years, they have the mentality of if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So that was going to be my question is how do you get these waste management companies comfortable with diving more into technology? But as you shared, um, the new generations that are coming through really helps to support that.
Yeah, it's a great point. They absolutely do help support it. Of course, you still have anomaly cases where, the owner is in the 70s or the VP of sales or the sales team is a little bit older and doesn't want to use technology. In those nuances or scenarios, what we've done is built a really simple technology platform. And so I've used a lot of software in my career, and oftentimes it's complex. You have to really understand how to use it to benefit from it. Our thought was let's build the simplest technology so that my 11-year-old sister knows how to operate it. Somebody who's been in trucks their entire career can use it and function from it. So that would be step number one. And then I think the second really important piece is I come from the industry. And so
Mhm.
there's already a level of connectivity, trust, communication that exists. And we've seen this. If you come from, San Francisco or the Bay Area, trying to sell a software into these legacy markets, it doesn't always do well because again, they feel that you're an outsider and don't really understand their core business, which is what will get them to trust you and use something that might be uncomfortable for them initially.
That's huge. Just being able to have that firsthand experience and know how the day-to-day works within the industry, like you said, really helps to build that layer of trust. And so that's one thing I'm wondering about too, because I feel like another hesitancy with innovating these legacy industries is that I guess just the onboarding process or like the actual implementation piece. So I'm curious if Commander has a part of that that just helps your client get up and running and make the burden a little bit less stressful or so heavy to deal with.
Yeah, great question. So we've done a couple things, and it's a really great point because across any industry, onboarding software is usually more complex than using it itself. And a lot of companies are hesitant to do so because they're like, hey, I paid for X, Y, and Z software, and it took me a year and a half to onboard. I don't have that time or money to do so. And
Mhm.
so with Commander, you can onboard actually the same day. We have a dedicated team of individuals that do everything from IT support, connecting your email address, making sure that all the integrations are in place, a lot of things that software parties don't usually do for the company internally. It's usually either outsourced or a consultant needs to be in place. So we've said we know our market. If our customers feel the onboarding process is too complex, they won't even give us a shot to begin with. And
Mhm.
so we've spent a lot of time and resources in building out a really simple module, but also allowing customers to really onboard the same day and benefit the next, which is really one of our key selling points in the product.
That's huge. I mean, it reminds me of the phrase, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't force it to drink. It's like the same idea.
Right.
You can create an amazing tool for someone but if they don't have the bandwidth or the desire or the time to be able to implement it themselves, there's only so much you can do. So I love that you include that implementation and onboarding piece yourself.
Totally.
Yeah. And so I'm curious to hear how, I guess, Commander has grown throughout the time that you've launched it. If there's any big developments that have been happening that you're able to talk about, or especially if you had a moment where you had to pivot. I love hearing pivot stories from founders.
Yeah, totally. So I'll answer the latter first and then the former. I mean, we're pivoting all the time. So
Hmm.
if you asked me a year ago, what's the vision for the company, I'd probably give you a vastly different answer than I did today. Similarly with products, with our team, with our structure. I mean, we're changing all the time. And I think that's the nature of building a company. Some of the really exciting things that we've seen though is just how quickly we've been adopted. Commander's now in over 30 plus states. We've generated over 39 million in pipeline revenue for our customer base, have over 100 customers using the product today all across the United States and Canada. And I think that a large part of that is really just the simplicity around our marketing efforts, around our sales efforts. We're not, I always say the best salesperson is one who walks into a room with a product. And then once they're finished with the presentation, the team member asks, well, who's the salesperson here? Right.
Hmm.
You don't want to be, shoving product down people's throats. You want to just be, here is the solution that I think will benefit your company. And there's a lot more receptivity to that. As far as internal growth metrics, I mean, we've been really excited to onboard Waste Connections, who's the second largest waste management company in the world. And again, just continuous growth across all customer segments. So I think, oftentimes you see a company with a great product and it's good for a certain part of the market and other ones not. We've been able to help customers with one truck operations all the way up to, 4,000 trucks in their fleet.
Yeah, which is great to just have that scalability and flexibility that you're able to accommodate. And so, on the topic of product, like walk me through the product, what it offers, how it works, differentiators, things like that.
Totally. So when we look at the Commander product, I like to break it down into three different sort of feature sets or modules. The first is the prospect and lead generation part of it, which is typically the most exciting. It's the sexiest. It's what people come in and say, everybody needs more business. There's no company that ever decides they have stopped growing. So that's our sort of wedge initial product. Then you have the Commander CRM, which, speaking of sort of differentiator factors or the nuances, it's purpose built for waste. And so to be really specific, when you use a CRM without calling out any names, that's more horizontal facing, you have to customize all the modules yourself. When somebody onboards, a waste hauler onboards into Commander CRM, it already lists all the different waste types that they would pick up for. It breaks up the quoting platform like they would typically use. It integrates with their existing operating system. So all the things that would typically, again, take more time and money to invest in to customize is inherently native to Commander. And then with our communications loop, whether it's sending out emails through the platform or phone calls or texts, we've done so with the truck lingo in mind. So the platform will actually emulate the way that you communicate as a waste hauler to your customer segment, all via AI. So we have over a dozen agents running in the background that are quite literally going through your emails and going through your text and then mimicking that lingo. So when somebody gets an email from you through the platform, it feels like it's coming from Ashley, not from an AI agent that's somewhere, who knows where. And then the third part of it is the customer success and marketing module, which is you've, found a customer through Commander, successfully onboarded them. Now, how do we retain them? And so we
Mhm.
use, multiple layers of intelligence to detect at-risk customers, if they're likely to churn, competitors in your area, why a customer would stay with you, and then we prompt that communication action item either to the sales team, to the marketing team, or the success team. And so each one of them have these like direct prompts, follow up with this customer on this day, send out an invoice to this customer if you're on the sales team, and make sure this customer is continuously happy by delivering on X, Y, and Z. So that's sort of like the
Yeah.
crux. And then that sort of encompasses what we call the go-to-market platform, which is everything from onboarding, success, and beyond.
Oh, I love it. I especially love the retention piece because That's one thing I see a lot just online, like in town Facebook groups of someone being like, my trash company has raised their prices and it's just trash. Like, who should I switch to? And so I feel like people don't always have loyalty to a trash company. They're just, which makes sense, they're just price shopping. But I like
Right.
that your platform has incorporated that retention piece so that your clients or customers are aware of like what they could be doing more of to retain more of their own customers.
Right. And to your point, like again, trash, there's no sort of masking it. It's a really basic, non-emotional decision. It's not like buying a new outfit or getting a new baseball
Yeah.
cap. We don't spend too much time thinking about it, but when service is poor, then we definitely spend time thinking about a better alternative. So
Mhm.
price is absolutely a factor, and we've seen customers switch over for that reason. But I think what's surprising to a lot of folks is that really good service will actually outwin price almost every single time because nobody wants the burden of, hey, I'm paying less, but will I be worried if my trash is overflow? Will I have raccoons and rats in my backyard, right? And nobody wants to deal with that. So it's interesting as well.
Yeah, definitely. And that's a good point. Is just like knowing that the service is really consistent, whether it's just communicating if there's delays or something like that. I love that Commander really helps to work that stuff in because it can make a difference, as I'm sure you've seen with your customers that you work with.
Totally.
Do you have any like case studies or success stories that you're able to share? I'd love to hear them.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, some of them have hit the wire just recently. I think we had one of our customers publish one just a few days ago. But two of my favorite stories, actually three, but they're multiple, of course. We had a customer out of Denver, Colorado, really small operation. They do primarily junk removal. So if you're, moving out of a new apartment and you have things left to throw over, if you're doing a home renovation, they're your guy. The company's called the Junk Truck. So if you're in the Denver area, absolutely recommend using them. They were able to see a double of sales in about 6 months of using the Commander platform. They had no previous organic growth efforts, and so all of their sales were, word of mouth and relationship driven. And the platform allowed them to expand without, hiring 10 to 15 people on their sales team. And so that was really exciting for us because oftentimes the conversation is AI or humans. And we've always said that I think the best use case for AI is with human in the loop, but it just makes you a better operator, right? So if you're a 7 out of 10 salesperson, it'll make you a 10 out of 10. I don't think it'll ever replace the human entirely. As we like to talk and we like to converse, especially post-pandemic era. People are excited about talking and dealing with people face to face. So that would be one really exciting story. And then there's another generational company, speaking to our earlier point of seeing this shift happen, called Ted's Trash out of Missouri. Third family owned. So they've, grandfather started the business. It's been passed down to the grandson today. His name is Ted as well, Ted Jr. And he was able to double their scope of reach geographically without hiring additional salespeople. And so they didn't have the bandwidth or budget to go ahead and, test out a new territory without knowing if the ROI would be there. But what the cool thing with Commander is you can go and test out a new area with our heat map feature. So you can see, hey, can I get customers in this area before building a new facility, before hiring a bunch of operating people to go and run that facility? And then you already have the money coming in, and then it's a simple, hiring process. So to me, those are two different unique use cases. One, sort of a smaller junk truck company, another more legacy business, but that was able to expand without a massive overhead cost.
Yeah, and I love that example of especially the one where they were able to expand without hiring salespeople. Because, as I'm sure you know, I feel like the waste management industry has a lot of overhead. I mean, trucks are expensive, they break down, something needs to be fixed constantly. So, as you shared, there's a lot of money that's required to go into building a facility, hiring drivers, having trucks and equipment. So, being able to use that heat map feature before going ahead and actually making the decision is really amazing.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, it pales in comparison to just we're thinking of AI era and all the technology. Imagine for folks that have never even used technology. Some have never even logged into their email, right? So for them, this is just completely innovative and exciting.
Definitely. And that's one question I have for you is just for founders who are building in a legacy market, what's any advice that you would give them? So you gave some great examples earlier about like A, working in the industry to begin with, and B, really supporting your customers with the onboarding and implementation process. But is there any other advice you'd give to someone building in this type of market?
Totally. I'd say leave your pride and ego at the door. I think as a founder, especially in a legacy market where there is a lot of ego that exists naturally because it is legacy and they have done things for a very long time and been successful at it, you cannot come in with the thought of I know better. You're not going to be met well. You're not going to be received well. And I think the best thing that I've done and that our team has done as a company is really listening to our customers. You're never going to get it right the first go round, but if you have enough humility to say, you know what? I thought I was right. I'm not. What do our customers want? What are they telling us? And let's quickly iterate and build what they want. They'll be customers for life. And so oftentimes as an early stage founder, especially if you raise outside capital, you have this pressure to increase revenues and grow the company and grow the business. That's like a rocket ship that'll eventually lose most of its parts. You want to build a sustaining marathon. And so the way to do so is say, you know what? I'm going to push profits aside initially, really understand our customers, really drive value, and then monetizing it won't be an issue later.
Yeah, that's a great point there. And I'm curious, are you a first-time founder? Is Commander your first company?
Commander is my first company. I was privileged enough to work alongside the multiple founders, which would be actually my other piece of advice. If you're going to either build a company, want to build go work for somebody who's doing it at the ground level.
Mhm.
Take a low paying job. I was his assistant at Battle Motors to start. I worked my way into sales. And then, of course, this is how this idea came about. But yes, Commander is my first go at it. And I always say, whether you've done five companies, one company, you need to always be learning. And so on my next company, which I intend to do in the future ones as well, I will always view myself as a first time founder. I think that humility allows you to become the best founder for that business and never get to a state of, yeah, I know better. And so I'm, not open to listening to others.
I love that. And I also feel like too, just having that mentality, I think, I don't know, I feel like it's almost like gratifying because you don't have to have like so much skin in the game or you don't have like bias in a sense. You can just kind of start fresh and approaching every project like that, I think can really make a difference rather than like you said, going in it feeling like you know everything or that you're going to be able to do everything you set your heart out to.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. They say that pride is the killer of joy. So choose one of them, right?
Definitely. And so, as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, you now have a team of more than 15 employees. And so, I'm curious to hear about what that was like, just scaling your team and how that contributed to your growth.
Yeah. So another key lesson early on as a first-time founder, your team is everything. Sure, you might be able to do each individual thing better or not, but not having a team to support you that you can fully trust makes it almost impossible. No matter how apt you are, how many hours you have in a day, you need those that are really good at what they do singularly for the business to grow. So we basically identified, and was one of the first things that I did along with my CTO, what are the areas that we're the strongest in? And then where's everywhere else? And we were able to just draw this sort of Venn diagram and say, okay, my expertise lies in sales, you're in technology, and let's just fill in the gaps one by one. So our hiring process was really aligned with what's our specific need today rather than what's the typical role that people hire at this stage. And there's no playbook to it. Some hire for sales first, others hire for engineering first. I think each business is case specific. Most of our hiring, honestly, has come via LinkedIn, which is a great tool for finding really good talent. Hiring process, looking at people that are first emotionally aligned with you. Are they looking to be at a company at this stage growth? I think that oftentimes founders look at the resume before looking at the individual. I've always said you can teach, experience, but you can't teach character. And so you want to hire people that have good energy, that are going to encourage the collective group effort, because all it takes is one poor employee to affect the entire business. And conversely, one positive employee to really set the tone for the company. So yes, we've hired an additional four people to our team. So we're actually at about 19 full-time employees now. And we'll probably be at 21 by the end of the quarter. So just really exciting times. If you're on the market, we're really hiring for every role, whether it's sales, engineering, marketing. So check us out on LinkedIn, and you'll see our job postings there as well.
That's amazing. And as you continue to grow, what have you learned about yourself as a leader? Because since this is your first company, I'm curious if this is like your first leadership role and if that was like difficult kind of being able to manage other people if you hadn't before.
Yeah, the extent of leadership that I had was growing into a divisional manager at the previous role in sales, and I had a team of
Mhm.
four under me. But being a sales leader versus running your own company are two vastly different things. So yes, I've learned a ton. I think the biggest lesson for me has been really trusting others and sort of not micromanaging, but really giving them the space to go and show what they're capable of. And I think that especially as a first time founder, it's your baby naturally, and so you want to just like be there all the time and support it and helicopter it. But people perform best when they feel that you trust them. So you might think that you're doing it a service by overseeing every little item of the day, but you're actually doing it an injustice. So that's been growth lesson. And then I think the second thing is giving those that are in the role that you've hired them to do so the space to collaborate with others and come up with creative ideas. It's a startup company, it's a tech company. There's a lot of innovation. We're all learning things every day, and people thrive on the ability to feel like they have expansion. Not no None of us are designed to fit into a mold, right? So I think that's the probably the second biggest thing I've learned.
Oh, I love that, especially because I feel like when you're so in the weeds of the business, sometimes it can be hard to take a step back and think of a new way to approach a problem. And so that's the benefits of having a team is they likely are coming up with ideas that make you think, wow, I never would have ever thought to do that, but that's a genius idea. Let's do it.
Totally. I say it's like being in a relationship with 19 people. They're constantly mirroring you and you're just all your filth comes to the surface. You have to deal with it, you know? So yeah.
Totally. And you've also fundraised for Commander. So, for any of our founders, because we have a lot of early stage founders who listen to this episode and are kind of going down like the should I look for capital? Should I just bootstrap? So, I'd love to hear more about your thought process for getting funding for Commander and what you learned through that as well.
Yeah, so it's a very case specific journey. I think the first question to ask yourself is if I don't raise the capital, can I still grow the business without it? If the answer is yes, I would recommend 10 out of 10 times don't raise the capital, keep the equity. It's your business. You can own more of it. In tech companies, most often than not, you need to build out software. Software is expensive. It might be a little bit cheaper today with all the AI tools that exist out there, like Lovable and others. All that to be said, if you do need fundraising and you are a tech company and you're looking to scale the business quickly, I would absolutely bring on capital. When it comes to bringing on capital, that's probably one of the biggest decisions that you make. I think of raising money from investors that are not your uncle or your family friend as probably one of the biggest decisions that you make. It's like you're essentially marrying the institutional fund that you raise from, and it's not just about the money. There are board meetings in place. There's corporate governance that comes into it. So as a young founder, I think it can be very appealing to bring on money earlier than you need to. It's whether it's an accolade or something that you've always dreamed of doing. One, raising capital is really, really hard. Most companies don't get funded. So before you even go out raising money, make sure that your entire value prop is really clear. Make sure that you're confident in your communication and where the company's at and your direction. Most early stage investors will invest in the person or the founder rather, more than the business or more than the product because especially at this level, there's not much that's visible aside from you and your character. And so I
Mhm.
think the mistake that I made in the early part of our fundraising process was thinking that they're going to invest in the business or the product or our sales. All they care about at the early stage level is you. And so that allowed me to sort of tweak and really show them who I am and not try to oversell, but just let them feel David as an individual. And that's what allowed us to raise a successful 5 million seed round. Um, but I would say again, it's a really personal case specific decision. Before you go and fundraise, ask yourself, am I fundraising for my ego or am I fundraising because the business inherently needs it to grow?
Love that. And I especially appreciate that you mentioned the point that it's not all about the money. I previously interviewed a founder who said that they actually went with an investor who offered them less money than other investors that they had connected with because of the fact that they felt like that one investor was a much better fit for what they
Wow.
needed. And
I
so
love
I
it.
think it's like just a good reminder that it's not all about the money. So thank you for mentioning that.
Totally. I love that story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so one thing I'd love to hear too, because this is one thing I always think about with legacy markets is just customer acquisition. I think it's a unique approach to take compared to more of like the modern industries and modern markets. And so I'm curious if that was a challenge that you found, knowing that a lot of the people you'd like to connect with maybe aren't on social media or using technology as much.
Yeah, totally. So absolutely. A lot of our customers are not online inherently. They don't spend their time on socials or LinkedIn or on Google. And so trade shows have been one of the best
Mm.
resources and mechanisms for customer acquisition. I think to date, and we've been very diligent with going to shows and being at these conferences, we've probably acquired over 40% of our customers via trade shows, which is incredible. And again, there are multiple of them a year. They're all over the country typically regionally. So if you're trying to connect with customers in the Northeast, you'll go to that show. And it really gives them a feel. I think that when you look at a legacy market, specifically waste management, people still need to do business with individuals and they need to see you and trust you. And so even if when we're going to sell customers, we might do the demo online, but at some point in the cycle, I'm either going out to see them, one of our salespeople will go and meet them in person. So that's been crucial. In parallel to that, I think there are a finite number of just like waste specific publications that exist out there whether it's Waste Today or Waste Dive. And so we've done a really good job at being there and showcasing our product and our team and our company there. And then lastly, again, bridging off relationships, like buy somebody something meaningful, invite customers out to a golf outing, take them to a baseball game or a basketball game. Those are things that go a really long way, more than a cold call, hey, I'm another software solution, which today's day and age, there is so much spam out there. I never pick up my
Yeah.
phone. I'm sure you're the same, right? Like, unless you know the number that you're getting a call from, you're not likely going to pick it up. So bearing that in mind, knowing that you're going to need to build a real relationship with your customers before you sell them something. And I think lastly, coming from the industry, thank God I already have these relationships. And so of course that's helped us tremendously. It has a domino effect in ways. So when you get a number of people buying and interested in what you're doing, the rest of the market just naturally discovers it and eventually gets excited about it too.
Yeah, I love the relationship piece because I think it's so important, especially in an industry like this one that has always operated on that face-to-face type of relationship. So, love what you shared about trade shows and looking for niche trade publications to get featured in, flying out to customers, all of that stuff. I think it's huge. And then I imagine you probably get good word of mouth referrals from there.
Yeah, I was gonna say, and the last little chunk of our new customers have come from, hey, John in so and so city referenced you to us, and he says the product's great. So we've seen an influx of that more and more, and I think that as we look over the next 3, 5, 10 years, probably majority of our sales efforts will be mending those relationships or working with those relationships rather than generating brand new introductions that are no longer necessary. So it's
Definitely.
fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah. And question for you is how you kind of operate as a founder. I always love to ask founders how they juggle their personal life with their founder life. And I intentionally don't say the word balance because I feel like there's never a perfect balance, but I think kind of having time for yourself to recharge and take stress off that you likely face every day is something that's really important. So I would love to hear like maybe habits that you have or routine just to make sure you're filling up your own cup.
Totally. It's a really great question. Your point is valid. There is no balance, especially at the early stages. And I'd be surprised if any other founder has found a way to do so, at least in the first 12 months. From the first day of the company all the way through our fundraising round, I think I was probably working 14 to 16 hours a day, with no hobbies, activities. I used to work out. I stopped doing so. It was completely imbalanced, but I said to myself, this is what's required to get to at least a level of some structure. And so now that we're there and we have an established team, and I've recently brought on a COO who helps drive execution and operations, I've achieved a little bit more balance, still working as many hours a day. But I'd say three things. One is a deep spiritual practice. That can be a multitude of things for anybody, regardless of religion or association. There are so many ways to practice spirituality, whether it's practicing kindness, whether it's meditation, whether it's the religion that you grew up with, whether it's being kind and finding time in your week to share with others at a homeless shelter or at an old age home. I mean, there's just so much you can do. That's helped me, one, ground myself, but two, get out of my own world because as a founder, it's me, 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 my company, my company, my company. Doing something for somebody else gets you out of it and helps you feel more stable. Working out, some physical activity, runs have been something that I got into recently. On a really stressful day when things are not working, I'll just leave the office. We thank God we live near the marina in Venice, so it's like I can
Nice.
run on the beach any time of day, and I'll do that. 45 minutes, clear my head, and then I come back and I have such a new clear set of thoughts. And then lastly, I mean, if you're in a relationship, I think that you need, as I am in one, you need somebody who's supportive of you. And I think that when you're trying to balance the company, the relationship, it's really hard to do so if you don't have an understanding partner. And I think being able to communicate that and articulate it in a way like, hey, this is my life, this is what I've signed up for, but I want you to be a part of it and not treat it as separate things because then you won't have the time because it's almost impossible to have time for both. So it needs to be one and the
Yeah.
same. Yeah,
I love those. I think what you shared there is just like really a reminder about setting aside intentional time to do the things that are important to you. Especially what you mentioned about the spirituality piece and just having some type of ritual routine that just helps to ground you. And like you said, remind you of the purpose that you have and what you're building.
totally. Yeah, couldn't emphasize it more.
Yeah. And so I think you mentioned that you're located in Venice. I always love to ask our guests, A, where they're located, and B, why it's been such a great location for them to build their startup. So I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah, totally. So I started the company in Miami, Florida. It's where I was just living prior to the business. And so we didn't have a team yet. It was myself and CTO. He was actually living in Santa Monica. And I had gone to visit him a couple of times. And every time I went there, I said, this is the best place to build a company. You walk out in the streets, there are venture capitalists down the street. There's founders writing down notes in a coffee shop. So it encourages, it's kind of like a mini Silicon Valley. And I think in parallel to that, where people work really influences how they operate and their level of satisfaction with the job and working for a company. And so as we thought about building out our core team, we wanted them to be in a place that they would love to work out of. So we have, a rooftop at our office out front, and half of our team, our sales team, works out there all day, whether it's making calls or talking to customers. And our team is able to luxury and benefit from that. I think that when you're looking at, deciding on a space, think of one that's conducive to your own mental thought process. For some, the energy of New York City is thriving and it's encouraging of that. For others, it might feel a little bit boxy and overwhelming. So it's really case specific, but we chose LA and Venice specifically as We wanted sunshine, we wanted nice weather, and we wanted to be able to attract talent that, it's important to them where they work out of, especially because we're fully in office, and so that was important too.
And I like that reminder of just thinking of what location works best for your needs. Because, like you said, some people might be drawn to specific locations, but if it doesn't suit you, like, why go to it just because you feel like you have to, quote unquote?
It's totally yes.
Yeah. And another question I love to ask our guests is to give a shout out to someone in tech that they're really feeling inspired by right now. So it could be a fellow founder, could be a VC, community builder. Would love to hear who you're really admiring lately.
Wow, long list of individuals, absolutely. Whew. I mean, I think a couple of folks come to mind, so I'll call it a few of them. I think number one would be Eitan Elbaz, he's one of the founders of 10110 Venture Group out of LA. He's just a personal investor in Commander and has been an advisor to us really early on. I think what inspires me the most about him is one, his giving back to the community. If you follow him on LinkedIn, if you just are in touch with his story, he's constantly giving back to founders. At this point in his career, he has no financial reason to do so. He's been very successful. He founded the company AdSense, which sold to Google several years ago.
Mhm.
But at this point, he just loves giving back. And so, specifically to younger founders, which he's been a mentor and a guide for me as well. And I see him do this on a large scale, whether it's at college campuses or hosting events. So I'm continuously inspired by his story. Another friend of mine who started a business out of New York City, his name's David Delapelle. He started a cybersecurity company a few years ago. And similarly, I think the theme that I've noticed in my favorite founders are those that they aren't just thinking about themselves and how they can benefit, but constantly giving back. And the earliest example of that was Antler VC out of New York and now SF and all over. He was part of their cohort and he made an introduction to the general partner for us there, which we ended up being part of that as well. So it's just cool to see people giving back and inspires me to do the same as I'm in my early part of my journey as I continue to grow. But I think it's one of the best things as a founder to not build this like, sort of White Castle vision where you're just like sitting up on the higher ups and you're detached from society. So I think it's important to constantly reinforce that as well.
100%. Good shout outs.
Yeah,
David, this has been such a fun episode, and I've so enjoyed having you on the show.
of
I would
course.
now love to have you share with our listeners where they can find you online in case they'd like to learn more.
Totally. And I thank you so much, Ashley. It's been a fun conversation, very natural. So I appreciate that. Yes, if you're in the waste management industry, if you're an investor or looking for a job at a fast growing startup, commanderai.com would be the best place. You can apply there and connect with us from there. We're active on LinkedIn as well. My name is David Berg. You can find me mostly on LinkedIn as well as on Instagram. My name is my handle. And then same, commanderai.com on all platforms, whether it's LinkedIn, whether it's Instagram, just type in Commander AI. But I appreciate you, Ashley. And again, this has been a lot of fun. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, David.
Awesome.